Bonegore's story. Before we start talking about Ripgor, we have to start talking about the legacy of his father and mother. Koraka Torgar Bonegore, Bonegore, was the name of Ripgor's father, and on the other hand, the name of his mother was Kra'an. Koraka was one of the clanless orcs that was put into slavery by the ogres in the High Wall mines. He worked heavy labor in those mines and from a young age. However, he was later, among others, also offered the opportunity to break free. But first, he had to claim 100 lives in the gladiator's pit. He did not succeed. He got to 64 before fainting and falling unconsciously on the ground. Many thought he was dead to his serious wounds, but to the ogre's surprise when they went to recover his body, he was still breathing. They threw him into one of the small one-man cells and chained him to the wall. When Karagath started his revolution, a female orc which had broken free from the chains had barged into the cell they were breaking everyone free, and she chucked a crude yet sharp rock at Koraka. He peered at it for a moment before she then spoke. "Earn your freedom, warrior." And in sheer desperation, Koraka stretched his hand, but it was a little too far to reach, and the further he went, the more his bone of his hand was pulled out of its socket. He snarled and groaned in pain, and the woman who had offered him the stone had already gone to join Karagath in his uprising. Eventually, Koraka's hand gripped around the stone. A moment of calm befell him. He closed his eyes only to open them with a vicious nature and raising the rock to slam it into the arm around the wrist. With every smash, a sickening crack or crunch heard, yet Koraka would not give in. He smashed and smashed and smashed, and eventually his arm dropped down. As he looked at it, upon it, the bone was very visible, broken and shattered. The blood dripped from his arm as he looked around and peered at the chains that hung off the wall. In brutish force, he broke it with the stone and wrapped the chain around his shattered hand, using the chain and cuff as a flail. He entered the arena along with the other shattered hand, and he fought for Kargath's uprising. Eventually, when they, along with the other shattered hand, broke free, Koraka reunited with the woman who chucked him the stone. This turning out to be Kra'an. They became mates. Together, along with several other shattered hands, they turned to the spires of the rock in Bladefist Hold to fight there. After some time, Kra'an turned out to be pregnant, and this right at the time of the invasion of the Horde and the Alliance. And as they banded together with the Arakoa, they invaded the spires of Tarak. With the help of Tarak, the Arakoa, the Alliance, and the Horde, Kra'an, along with many other shattered hands, were slaughtered, slain. She was cleaved in her shoulder and left on the ground to bleed out in the heat of battle. Koraka roared out in anger as it happened, charging in at the green-skinned orc of the Horde who had cleaved his axe through her shoulders. He cleaved them down and chased out the Horde upon their invasion for a moment. He gripped on Kra'an, lifting her up and taking her somewhere safe, along with a group of shattered hands, and retreated they did to a safe place. Koraka roared in anger when he explained to the others that Kra'an was pregnant, and a shattered hand blood mage presented himself, offering Koraka's child another way to live. By sustaining the child with blood magic, he might just survive, and Koraka praised the blood mage if he were to do it. And so the mage did, offering the child life support through blood magic long enough for it to survive. Eventually, they got to know that Kargath Bladefist was slain by the Horde and Alliance in Highmoor, and eventually the child, later to be named Ripgor, had enough blood magic to fuel him so he could live on his own. Karaka raised Ripgor, and one of the traditions of the Shattered Hand was carried on to Ripgor, sacrificing his hand in order to replace it with a prosthetic. During this tradition, Ripgor met another, named Gorthuk. Together, they did the tradition to sacrifice their hand in order to replace it with a prosthetic weapon. Like all of the Shattered Hand, however, along with the others, they joined the Mag'har. Being under the threat of the Draenei, he and Gorthuk became young childhood friends. Their life carried on as Ripgor grew up alongside Gorthuk and his father. They fought alongside the Mag'har for years to come, fighting against the threat of the Draenei, hatred boiling in their veins as they grew ever more resentment towards them. One tale describes of how Karaka and his son Ripgor were both covered in the Draenei blood, the gore that showed itself, and the bones that littered the ground of rotting corpses that laid waste to the ground after having been there for several years. They both then earned the name Bonegore. After dozens of years of fighting on Draenor, in desperation of survival against the Draenei, then, however, came the Horde. Eitrek entered through the portal and asking Grommash for his aid, his debt to the Horde to be paid, and Grommash agreed, sending Griara along with the Horde, while Lancester and Grommash Hellscream stuck behind to face the remaining Draenei and hold them off for long enough. Upon doing so, the Mag'har orcs traveled along with Griara, joining the Horde. In the meantime, Ripgor and Karaka had earned their names upon some of the Mag'har. Known to some as the Bonegore themselves, their names were somewhat well known among them, and therefore many followed them. During the Fourth War, some of the Mag'har, which included Ripgor, Karaka, Gorthuk, and some others, were sent to Vol'dun. The Volpira were under siege by the 7th Legion, and they, along with other members of the Horde, were the first to answer the call. Upon arriving there, they charged into combat, while the Volpira fought for their lives. The reinforcements of the Horde, now they stood a chance. Karaka ushered in combat secretly, hoping to meet his honorable death in combat there. He faced 3 of the 7th Legionnaires, a human, a dwarf, and a light-forged Draenei. In the meantime, Gorthuk and Ripgor ushered the Volpira, seeking to bring them to safety. The wounded ones that was. However, as Karaka fought off the trio of legionnaires that stood before him, he swung his blade fist and flail in hand, striking at the human's legs. He then fell to his knees, but the dwarf struck Karaka from behind in the lower back, causing Karaka to fall forward. He screamed loudly, "Loktar-Ogar!" until he was cut off by the Draenei, who brought down his large mace into the head of Karaka, crushing his skull and ending the Shattered Hand's life once and for all. This resulted in Ripgor going mental and berserk, bloodlust taking over him as he rushed into combat. As he did, the blade fist carved through the spine of the downed human. His blade cuts into the lower leg of the Draenei, and as he downed the dwarf, tried to leap over to Ripgor, but he was soundly cut off, and met only with the blade fist as he was piked upon it. Ripgor slammed the blade fist down with brutish might into the ground. The Draenei slowly rose to his feet, facing Ripgor, his monstrous structure towering over Ripgor, and Ripgor turned around menacingly, staring up at the monstrous Draenei who raised his mace, aiming to strike down. But Ripgor swiftly spun around the mace that it brought down, slashing his blade fist at the waist of the Draenei. Upon doing this, the Draenei surged with might, healing his wounds as the Vindicator turned to Ripgor, swiftly swinging his mace. Upon doing so, Ripgor was struck, sent barreling across the ground. This made him drop his blade as he slowly pushed himself up, growling. His bloodlust showed as his eyes turned to the Draenei. As the Vindicator approached, he said, "May the light guide you in your final moments." Ripgor stood up, ribs broken, bruised and battered, slumped over as he stared at the Draenei. "No light will guide me," he stated as he stared at the Vindicator. "Surrender "And I will give you a swift death," the Draenei said, confident that the orc would not be able to put up a fight after such a hit. "I will never give up!" Ripgor screamed as he launched himself at the Draenei. His blade fist struck right at the Vindicator's abdomen as the yellow eyes of the Vindicator widened. Ripgor whispered in his ear, "Your light is mine." As he then roared out, opening his mouth wide, gaping, he chomped down at the exposed shoulder of the Draenei, biting out a large chunk of the Draenei's shoulder. Upon doing this, the Vindicator collapsed to his knees, uttering the words, "The light, forsake me." The light dimmed from the Vindicator's eyes as Ripgor stood relentlessly, angrily, screaming across the battlefield, "Anyone else?" But Gorthok came to usher him to safety when Ripgor collapsed. He was healed to the blood mages, left slowly to recover. Once he awoke, he was in Orgrimmar, and when he asked where his father was, Gorthok just shook his head, remaining silent. Ripgor snarled as he knew what this meant. He asked Gorthok again where his father was buried, but when he heard his father wasn't given a burial, and that his corpse was left for the vultures to pick up, that it was left to rot in the dunes, he grew furious. He rose to his feet, still weak from the recovery, but he called upon the warriors he trusted them the most. Told them to meet out in the barrens, and there he gave a monumental speech, a monumental moment for Ripgor and his newly formed, soon-to-be clan. "I awoke from my slumber to find out that my father perished in combat. He died honorably, and yet he was not offered an honorable burial, nor a ceremony. Did our time among the rest of the Mormaghar mean nothing? Did we fight for the Horde for nothing? Is this all we are, but pawns in a game? Well, I will not be a pawn. No more. I say we rise up. No longer are we Maghar, Iron Horde, Dark Horde, or whatever you call yourselves. If you wish to follow me and rise up to change the world, remake it, and show them the true meaning of honor, then you can join me. Join me in my clan, and we will reforge this world and show them what it really means to fight for your people." Upon his speech finishing, many followed him into the barrens to raid an orcish camp, take it as their own. Upon doing so, they set up a foothold, recruiting any orcs that were loyal to his cause, and slaying any other who opposed him, terrorizing the barrens. His insanity got close to him. But what's most peculiar about the situation is that it is not the death of his father which led him to his insane outburst of attempting to completely destroy the world. In fact, it was because he was denied the hunt upon a troll by an elf named Galarius. While in the barrens, however, he began recruiting orcs of all clans and origins, as long as they were loyal to him and his cause. He began conducting dangerous and dark rituals, and while they do this, they grew in numbers infinitely. A dark influence from the outside whispered to him, quote-unquote, guiding him in his final moments. This dark presence turmoiled in his mind and buried himself as a manifestation of Ripgor himself, offering him untold power. Power Bonegore himself would soon deny to keep, as he set up a trap for the dark presence that buried itself within his mind. Within the cave, Within the dark chasm, he set up runes which would trap the dark spirit which had latched itself onto Bonegore. And all he needed now was our quote-unquote heroes to set him free. So he led Thalarius and Roifa and the others into a dark place, only to let himself be weakened, in hopes to activate the rune as soon as this dark presence released itself, trapping it and burying himself beneath the rocks, while the others managed to get out safely. In his death's wake, the dark presence lashed itself onto another individual, someone who was close to Ripgor, Gorthuk, as he now leads the charge of the Bonegore clan to fight in honor of the loss of Ripgor. The darkness that turmoils within their minds is untold, and the voices are never-ending. But who knows? Perhaps our adventures may put a stop to their tyrannical reign. Perhaps they may once again bring peace to their minds. If only that which is to come. I want to thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed and loved or like me doing story videos like this, then please do leave a big fat thumbs up on this video. I did actually enjoy making this video, this World of Warcraft story video for my character. It's amazing. I love doing the Bonegore stuff, and I definitely want to do more stuff like this. I have lots of more stories that I can tell in relation to World of Warcraft original characters. If you want me to do that, then do please let me know by liking this video and commenting how I could maybe improve this story, or how I could have done things differently to make it make more sense. I'm not a World of Warcraft lore expert, and I usually try and go a little bit off the track to make a unique story, and yet justify the actions of some of my characters in some way, shape, or form, or at least give them motives for what they do. Anyway, that is it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, as I said, please leave a big fat thumbs up. This was a blast. It took me a while to get all of this set up, and I know that some of the pictures didn't appear on the screen at the correct times. Maybe I sped through a lot of the pictures. That is generally because of the program or me forgetting stuff. Either way, this was an absolute blast. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.